Good morning, welcome back. And it seems some of our questions are being answered finally. England had enough. It was Rashford, actually, exactly what they needed to get them through to the next stage of the World Cup. In the meantime, Wales, Ecuador, and Iran all exit the World Cup. Of course, Qatar are already gone. We look ahead to England versus Senegal. We look ahead to Netherlands versus USA. And of course, Group C and D are going to be settled today. Who's going to come out on top in those groups, in particular the Argentina group? This is the big one we all want to see. History is going to be made at the World Cup later this week, actually, so I will tell you a little bit about that. And let's start speculating. Who's the worst team in the World Cup this year? Who was, is, will be? Is, I think. Who is the worst team? It's almost a was at this stage, I think, in my opinion, but we'll get onto that. We'll get onto that shortly. Thanks for joining us as ever. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell as well if you want to be notified of future videos. Every little helps, as they say. Okay, we're going to get straight into this now in a sec. All right, so I'm going to hop over here to results from yesterday. Of course, we had first up, this is the easiest way to do it. Netherlands versus Qatar, relatively straightforward. Nothing too shocking here about the outcome of this one. It was Gakpo and De Jong that scored. So Gakpo now has 3 goals in the tournament, which puts him a joint lead scorer along with Marcus Rashford. If you look at the stats, 54% possession versus 38% possession for Netherlands, and attempts on goal. Yeah, a few more for the Netherlands, but they weren't amazing by any account. But I think they kind of just phoned it in for this one. Although you could make that argument that they've done that for all of their matches so far. Anyhow, that brings us over to the next match, and this was very boring in the first half, Ecuador versus Senegal, but it sparked into life in the second half. Of course, the first goal did come for Sarr in the first half on the 44th minute. That was a penalty. Then Ecuador via Casado did shoot back in the 67th minute, as you can see on the screen. And then it was Koulibaly that got the winner for Senegal. But overall, Senegal looked like slightly the better team. If you look at possession, though, Senegal didn't have the majority of possession by any means, 32% versus 51% for Ecuador. That could in itself be a warning for England. That Senegal are perfectly happy to sit back and use their fantastic team to counterattack whenever needed. Looking at attempts and goal, this is where it tells a totally different story. 15 versus 8 in favour of Senegal here in terms of attempts and goal. On target was pretty even. Off target, they had a lot more off target. Inside the penalty area, they had a lot more, and outside the penalty area was pretty even. So yeah, it'll be a tough ask for England to overcome Senegal. I do expect England should be able to do it. They have a better team in my opinion, but it won't be plain sailing. Senegal have done well. They finished in second in this group. Then yes, of course, England beat Wales 3-0. Actually, it looked like it was the classic old England that turned up for the first half for a little bit. But in the second half, yeah, they got themselves into gear. A fantastic free kick from Marcus Rashford on the 50th minute to open the scoring. And then immediately, Phil Foden was in for a goal as well. And we had Marcus Rashford then scoring again in the 68th minute. So as I mentioned, Marcus Rashford now is leading goal scorer in the tournament along with Gakpo. It would be amazing if they both ended up being Manchester United players by the end of January. One of them is already, of course. But it was a really good performance from Rashford. Really good that Southgate gave into the pressure to actually start Rashford. I was very concerned when I saw the initial lineup with Henderson and Rice. That's a very defensive setup against Wales, and certainly in the first half, that's how it appeared. Wales didn't have too much about them, unfortunately. They didn't put up a great I don't even know what you'd call it. I wouldn't call it a defense. I wouldn't call it an attack. But they didn't put up a great show of themselves. It was all a little bit easy for England in the second half when they did pull away. You can see the possession stats there, 58% versus 33% with 10% in contest. But it's really when you get down to the attempts and goal, you see the massive difference here. Massive. 7 versus 17, of which 7 of those were on target for England. That's one of the higher tallies you'll see for on target shots in this World Cup. Off target was 6 versus 3. Inside the penalty area, 13 versus 1. So it was all England there. And unfortunately, that's it for Wales. They go out of the World Cup. I had predicted them to come through in second place, I think, in this group. So I'm somewhat disappointed. You know, our Celtic neighbours, it would have been nice to see them progress. Dark horses, you always go for the dark horse in tournaments like this. But no, it wasn't to be this time for Wales, unfortunately. And then the final match in this group was the United States versus Iran, the big grudge match. Thankfully, it went down without any major incidents. It was Pulisic that got the sole goal for the United States towards the end of the first half. Iran, they tried, but US looked like the better team for the majority of the match. You can see the possession stats here, very even for both teams, but actually the attempts and goal, then once again you see that it's almost double. It's 6 versus 12, so that's exactly double in the total attempts and goal. On target 5 versus 2, off target 4 to 4, inside the penalty area 8 to 5, and outside 4 to 1. So the US were definitely on top of that match, and they deserve to go through in second place in this group. They have been very good, very impressive draw with England. They really frustrated England. They made the worst parts of England shine through there, really, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think they just pressured them enough that England were super defensive and somehow weren't up for the battle on that day. But we'll see what the US are made of. They have a fairly winnable game against the Netherlands coming up. And maybe in saying that, I should get there. Yes, okay. This is the final group standings, just before we go on to what the knockout stages will look like. So we have obviously the Netherlands winning Group A. Yeah, they weren't hugely convincing at all during this tournament so far, but maybe they're just slow starters and they'll get up and running now that we're into the knockout stages. We can only hope. Their 1-1 draw with Ecuador was a little bit surprising, I think. And Ecuador looked like good value for second place. It was a hotly contested battle between Senegal and Ecuador for the second place. It came down to that final match between both of the teams, and as you can see, it was Senegal that came out on top. As a result, that put Senegal into second place in the group. And then, yes, looking at Group B, England's group, England came out on top with 7 points. Of course, they had that draw with the United States, 0-0, fairly drab. But they did have the big win against Iran, which got people very excited. And of course, the 3-0 win against Wales last night. Now, I saw a lot of media talking about how this is just what England need and they're going to go on now and win the World Cup and everything else. Look, I'm not totally convinced about England yet. I don't think their style of football is great. I do agree that they have one of the best teams in the tournament. They just need to play like one of the best teams in the tournament. I think that's what I'm really getting at. So it was US that came out on top versus Iran. So once again, straight shootout for second place. And Wales, unfortunately, coming in last place, and they could only manage 1 point. Of course, we need to mention Qatar in Group A as well. The hosts, home nation, they were out before yesterday's match, and they finished on 0 points. So that's them done for as well. Let's have a look forward then to the knockout stage. So knockout stage, we see there on Saturday at 3 p.m. GMT, I guess, we have Netherlands versus USA. And I think the US have a great chance in this match, just based on what we've seen from the Netherlands so far. Netherlands have a good team. They have a good group of players. They should have that killer instinct as well. Gakpo has looked very good up front. Frankie de Jong should be able to boss the midfield. Memphis really needs to, Depay, he needs to step up as well. He hasn't really been involved too heavily in the goal scoring. I know he almost got one yesterday. He got an assist, I think. But you know, there are a couple of big players in that team. Of course, we have Van Dijk at the back as well. A couple of big players in that team that really do need to step up at this stage, and they have a great opportunity. The US, though, they can write themselves into the quarterfinals of this tournament if they're able to get this win. And it would be a very famous win over the Netherlands. And of course, everything from there would be a bonus for the US as they head into the next World Cup, which will be hosted in the US. So that will be a nice way to get them up and running. And then let's move down along. We can see here, yes, England versus Senegal then on Sunday at 7 p.m. England should be winning this every day of the week. England should be winning this based on the team that they have. Senegal do have a good team. However, they don't have Mane, unfortunately. I think he could make a huge difference for them, but they don't have him. They have some very, very good and impressive players. In saying that, and they will cause England a lot of problems, especially if England turn up and play like they did in the first half of the Welsh match last night, or if they play like they did against the US. So there is certainly a chance there for Senegal, and I think Senegal would be wise to go for it. They've really nothing to lose here. They should just go for it. Absolutely. Why not? Why not go for it, Senegal? I'm really looking forward to that. I think this is one of the exciting matchups that we have in the next round. Okay, right. Speaking of exciting matchups, let's have a look at what's coming up later today. Another four stunning matches, hopefully. I do struggle when both matches are on at the same time because I never know which one to watch. Sometimes it's very obvious, sometimes not so obvious. Okay, Group C then. This is this evening. It won't be the afternoon match actually, so they're just doing this a little bit backwards. But we have Poland versus Argentina at 7. And in parallel, then we have Saudi Arabia versus Mexico at 7 as well. Uh, Realistically, looking at this group, nearly anybody could come out of this. I don't think Mexico are even out of it just yet. But Argentina obviously will look to beat Poland. I think Poland are going to sit back in this one and look for the draw. That would put them on 5 points. Potentially, they could finish in second place in the group if they get 5 points. But it would, more importantly, it could put Argentina out of the tournament. Argentina could finish on 4. If Saudi Arabia and Mexico draw, then Saudi Arabia are on 4 and they go out via goal difference. However, if Saudi Arabia beat Mexico, then they go through in either first or second. So there's a lot to play for in this group. And Mexico won't be an easy match for Saudi Arabia either. Saudi Arabia, very big opportunity for them here to make it out of the group. We await the outcome with bated breaths. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I really, really am looking forward to those matchups. I am just a little bit worried about Poland sitting back and allowing Argentina, with all the firepower they have, to come at them. It can't be a good recipe for success, but who knows. Okay, Australia versus Denmark then at 3 p.m. today. And as I said, in parallel, we have Tunisia versus France. So France are through. They're not going to be hassled here unless they lose dramatically to Tunisia. There is a possibility that France will put out a weakened team. Actually, I think there's a very strong possibility that France will put out a weakened team. So there is in that an opportunity for Tunisia to do something. They probably won't beat France. It could be a draw. It comes down to, once again, a straight shootout between Australia and Denmark for second place in this group. I would fancy Denmark every day of the week, but Australia put in a fantastic performance already against Tunisia. Strong team, they're bonded, everything else like that. So Australia could be the shockers coming out of this group. I anticipate it'll be Denmark, but just watch this space. Australia versus Denmark is the one that, if I was actually available at 3 p.m. today, that's the one I would be watching. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to record that and watch it later on. Oh, it's tough having World Cup on during the day, isn't it? It's so tough having World Cup on during the day. But anyway, that's what it comes down to. So, what have I missed out on? Let me see. We've covered, yes, Rashford, just the tonic for England. Also, it was very good to see Phil Foden start during that match. So, Southgate listening to the criticism, good. We have Qatar, Wales, Ecuador, and Iran all exiting the World Cup, and we will have another 4 teams confirmed as being out today. We've had a look at England versus Senegal, Netherlands versus the USA. As I said, a very big opportunity there for the USA to potentially do something against a Netherlands team that haven't looked that impressive yet in the World Cup. They haven't looked that impressive yet. Group C and D to be settled today. Yes, we just spoke about that. History to be made at the World Cup. Indeed, there is history to be made at the World Cup today. Well, sorry, not today. It's this week. So actually, Stephanie Frappart of France will become the first ever woman to referee at the Men's World Cup, and that's going to be happening later this week for the Costa Rica versus Germany match. So this is really, really good. I think on the back of everything we're hearing about, you know, what's going on in Iran and everything else like that, this is a very positive step. So actually, I would almost applaud FIFA for this, although I think, FIFA are playing games with us here. Regardless, this is fantastic, and it's actually going to be an all-female trio of referees and assistant referees for this match. We have Nusa Bach of Brazil and Karen Diaz of Mexico appointed as the assistant referees. So yeah, look, I think it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing them in action, and they can't be worse than some of the male referees that we've had in this tournament so far, or even the ones we see in the Premier League in England. So maybe they'll show them how it's done, and that's fantastic. Um, I did forget to mention as well this protester that came onto the pitch the other day during one of the matches. Let me see if I can remember which match. It was Portugal and Uruguay. So he lost credibility for me with the fact that he tried to cover everything. So he had respect for Iranian women on his back. Okay, perfect, very very good. He had "Save Ukraine" or something to that message on the front of his T-shirt, and then he had, of course, the rainbow flag to go with all of that. So I think he's trying to cover a little bit too much. I felt his message was a little bit watered down. Fair play to him for trying it anyway, and he will apparently not face any charges for doing so, but he will be exported out of Qatar fairly, fairly fast. He's probably already been bundled into a plane and sent out of there. But he could have done with perhaps a Black Lives Matter hat or something like that, just to top off in terms of messaging. But yeah, interesting. All eyes, of course, were on Qatar and FIFA and everybody else like that. So I don't think they could do anything too harsh in that case. But it's fascinating. And that brings me then to the final topic. So, who have been the worst team in the World Cup, or who are going to turn out to be the worst team in the World Cup? There are two teams in the tournament at the moment that have 0 points. Qatar, and they've played 3 matches, and they're the hosts. Political. Oh, should we go there? And Canada have 0 points as well, but Canada do have one more game to play, so we have to be fair to Canada. Also, uh, who am I looking for here? Wales are out of the tournament now. They finished their 3 games with 1 point. So maybe I'll do a poll on the YouTube page as to who you think is the worst team in the tournament so far. There was a very good shout for Costa Rica, except they actually won a match. They beat Japan. So Costa Rica, no, we can't include them in that listing at this moment in time, I don't think. For me, it's probably Qatar. They didn't fill me with confidence that they were able to do anything against anyone. Wales were also very, very disappointing. And I think, Gareth Bale's overall performance kind of, for me, encapsulated the whole Welsh experience. But that's where we're at. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the football that happens later on. I'm hoping I certainly will as well. It could be a very, very interesting matchups happening. And leave us some comments as well. Let me know who you think is going to win, and I'll see if I remember to put up a poll about worst team of the World Cup so far. And I will speak to you soon. Thanks very much for joining, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Speak to you soon.